Hey everyone, I'm Brandy Sellers-Jackson, and this week on the Life with Baby podcast, I'm talking to Jennifer Lezak, the go-to lactation consultant for new moms navigating the bittersweet journey of nursing. Jennifer Lezak is an international board-certified lactation consultant that is helping countless parents on their breastfeeding journey. She has worked at several hospitals in LA, including Cedar-Sinai and Good Samaritan, along with many years in her own private practice, Milkmaid, LA. She is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things breastfeeding and supporting parents as they navigate their postpartum journey. Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me, you guys. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited.
I've had a long history with Ergobaby, so I'm always happy
you do.
To keep it in the family.
Yes, you do. I think we were just saying how when we met, I think my middle child, who's now 8, was a baby, like a newborn.
That is correct. Yes.
A newborn. Yes. And I remember seeing you and hearing through whispers that, oh, she's a lactation consultant. She's a lactation consultant. And I was on the struggle bus when it came to breastfeeding. And I remember thinking, I need to talk to her. But I remember talking to you and you just being so warm and gentle and just so encouraging and just letting me know that you can do it. You can do it and you'll be fine. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. And I think that's what parents, we all want to hear that when we're deep in the trenches.
Absolutely.
You know?
It's hard. It's all hard. My job is more like keeping people calm. I always tell people don't look too far into the future because then you start panicking. Just look at today. You're going to be fine. Then let tomorrow come and it'll be fine.
Which leads me to my first question. I think this is a great place to start. But what are the most surprising things about breastfeeding that most people don't talk about?
I would say the most surprising thing about breastfeeding would really be how hard it is and how time-consuming it is in the beginning when you're first learning. And people that don't understand, they're saying, well, you need to teach people to breastfeed? I don't understand. Don't you just know how to do it? And I like to remind people, we don't really live in a village culture here in this country, certainly. Even for myself, I happen to have a good friend who was breastfeeding before I had kids. And I was like, so what do you do? And let me watch.
Tell me more about this. Yeah.
But really, most people don't see anyone breastfeeding up close until it's themselves. I always say rare because people come crying every day. And I'm like, listen, it's rare the person that a baby comes out and they latch immediately and there's no problems. I say maybe 2% of people does that happen to. Most of us, it's a struggle to figure out how to latch the baby, get comfortable and in best case scenario, I always say you're going to be sore, tender, sensitive for a good couple weeks. And then you're add sleep deprivation on that. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah. And I think that's the one thing, we take breastfeeding classes and we read books, but really nothing can prepare you for the exhaustion of those first couple weeks.
Yeah, they're brutal.
Yeah. When I meet people, I'm like, I'm not trying to scare you. I just want to be realistic on how normal it is to be exhausted, to be tired, to be like, I don't understand how anyone does this for a year and sort of feel like a failure that you don't love it right away. Yeah. And it's not for everyone. And I don't certainly have pressure anyone to do anything.
And I love that you said that too, because I think in this culture of, breast is best, breast is best, breast is best. It's like your sanity is best.
Absolutely. That's my number one rule to people.
Yeah. Your sanity and your mental health is actually best.
I always say you're hyper-focused. I understand where you are. You're looked at Instagram and everyone's breastfeeding and it looks so easy. And why don't they have 10,000 pillows? I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. And I just like to remind people, Instagram's not real. Don't look at it.
Don't.
It will get easier, but it is so hard in the beginning.
It's so hard. And
I think many people look to have not an excuse to quit, but permission.
Yes.
And I think that's so important. Like, we shouldn't feel guilted into breastfeeding. You know?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. And I love that it's coming from you and IBCLC that we shouldn't, because I think in the midst of like the sleep deprivation and this pressure.
Society pressure, right?
Right. We have to do it. We have to do it. And it's like some people, it's not going to happen.
No.
I mean, I remember with my oldest, I didn't breastfeed him. I breastfed him for like 6 days.
Yeah.
I don't even think 6 days. And it was just because, back in 2006, there was no such thing as Instagram. There was no such thing as, this like community that we kind of have now.
Yeah, which is good and bad.
And I didn't have, my mom didn't breastfeed.
Mm-hmm. My mom didn't either.
John's mom didn't breastfeed. They come from that generation where it was like bottle. She
was like, we thought formula was better. I didn't know. I go, Mom,
right.
Like, I still love you. I'm walking around happy.
I'm okay. Right. And then like, I think if I was the only person in my friend group that had kids at that time, because we were really young. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that. And so I could have either beat myself up about it or just, give myself that permission to do what I needed to do for my mental health. And the same thing with my, every journey I think was different with each kid.
Yes.
And I just didn't even factor in that each kid was going to be so different. I mean, every dream that I had was about breastfeeding, and weigh-ins. And it's funny too, because I read this article and I saw myself, and this is what gave me permission to do whatever I needed to do. I remember reading this article about this other mom who's postpartum, and she's, because of sleep deprivation and because of, hormonal shifts, she literally began to have postpartum psychosis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And started imagining snipers on her roof of her house. And she ended up having to be committed just for that short time. She was sharing her story about how give yourself permission to get whatever you need, because postpartum is real and breastfeeding is really hard.
And when people say, oh, it's free. And I'm like, no, it's not.
But is it though? Is it free? Yeah. What? And they only say that because they don't value our sanity. That's why they say it's free. And our time and energy.
No.
Like, it's not free. Yeah. It's not free.
It's the hardest job ever. Yeah.
It costs something. It costs.
I always tell moms, because, they ask, well, how long should I breastfeed? I go, breastfeeding should only continue when both parties agree they want to do it, right? And when one party decides, I don't want to do it anymore, then we don't do it. We just let it go. Yeah. You're so hyper-focused. And I think a lot of it is society and family pressure. I always tell people, I'm like, it doesn't matter how you feed your baby, because they're going to love you no matter what.
They're going to love you.
I go, this is your hyper focus. I understand that. I go, but look, in 2 years, your hyper focus is going to shift to daycare. And what daycare? Oh my God, they need the best daycare. And then it shifts to preschool, and then it shifts. And I'm like, it
going to continually
gets easier. It just gets different. And you just have to allow yourself to come, first in a way, because really your mental sanity is the only thing holding the family together.
Yeah, that's the only thing that we have.
That is all we have.
Baby will be happy if we're happy.
I feel like, the number one thing that people don't expect is how hard it's going to be and how much time. I always tell people, I would expect you're holding your baby 22 out of every 24 hours in the beginning. And they're like, what?
Easily.
Easily. Because what they hear in the hospital is feed your baby every 3 hours. And I'm like, no. What you should hear is feed your baby anytime they look hungry, even if you just finish feeding them. But if it's been longer than 3 hours, then we start waking them up in the first, 2 weeks. Really, no baby is breastfeed for 15 minutes, breastfeed for 15 minutes.
And then
I swaddle them up, I put them to bed, and 3 hours later, I breastfeed for 15 minutes. I'm like,
oh no, it's not like that.
that's never, if something was
Never.
going on like that, there's something wrong with your baby because they should be awake.
They're constantly, they're constantly eating.
They want to be here. They know your voice. They know your heartbeat.
Yeah.
They want to be held. They don't want to go in whatever bassinet you spent $400 on. They want to be with you.
Period. Does baby wearing actually make parenting easier? Yes. Yes, it does. That's why we collaborated with parenting experts, Dr. Bill and Martha Sears, to write Why Baby Wear? Benefits for You and Your Baby, a comprehensive guide that's been over a decade in the making. Look, we didn't invent baby wearing. It's an ancient solution that has benefits for modern parents, and we believe it can change the world. So we wrote this book to share how baby wearing can help foster close and loving parent-child relationships and why it has so many other physical, mental, and emotional benefits. It will empower and encourage you with really simple and practical tools to make your lives with baby easier. Get your copy of the book on Amazon or ergobaby.com. Wiggly toddler, breastfeeding on the go, need to give your back a break from all that baby carrying? Yeah, we hear you. Designed specifically for those up and down and on-the-go days, the Lift Hip Seat gives you and your baby quick and easy comfort in every lift. Shop now on ergobaby.com. What would you say is the best way to transition from bottle feeding to going back to work? For those who may need to leave baby at home, for work or appointments, what's the best way to do that?
Even if you're not going back to work, and a lot of people say, well, I don't need to bottle feed because I'm going to be home with my baby. And I always encourage people to teach your baby how to take a bottle because life gets in the way. You don't know what's going to happen. You could go to the doctor and then car accident, you get stuck in traffic for hours and, your baby's at home hungry. If your baby doesn't know how to take a bottle, it's stressful for your baby. It's stressful for whoever's caretaking for your baby, and it's stressful for you.
Yes.
So regardless of going back to work, I always encourage people like around that second or third week, if you haven't already introduce a bottle and be consistent. So some people will go, I gave him a bottle at 3 weeks ago, but then you didn't give him another one until 5 months. And they're like, I don't want this anymore.
They're like, what is this?
I'm like, be consistent. If one a day seems like too much for you to do, then one every few days. Like, here's this thing, you know how to do it. It's fine. It shouldn't detract from your breastfeeding experience. It's just another tool in your toolbox.
Yeah. And I call it self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. You might want to go to Vegas. I don't know. Go get a facial, go to a spa all day. But like if your baby only breastfeeds, you're kind of stuck.
It gives you options, I think.
Absolutely. I think there's nothing wrong with bottle feeding a baby. And I really think it's important that babies know how, because there's nothing more stressful than the mom that calls that's saying, oh my God, I have to go back to work on Monday and my baby won't take a bottle. What do I do? And I'm like, ooh. Okay.
What are the common misconceptions that you hear a lot when it comes to bottle? Because that's something that we hear about, like, oh my
nipple confusion is the number one. And everyone's like, well, what about nipple confusion? I'm like, your baby's not confused. They know what your breast is and what a nipple is. Yeah. What that really they're thinking in their head is flow preference, right? A bottle's really easy. The milk comes out. You don't have to do much to get it. Whereas at the breast, obviously, you've got to work at it if you want to get milk out. So I always say it's flow preference. There's no nipple confusion. So even the most, sleep deprived couples that come in, I'm like, just pump and give them a bottle and take a nap. Have your husband feed them. Have your partner feed. And then, well, what about nipple confusion? I'm like, that's not a thing. If your goal is to breastfeed and your baby's getting the majority of their feedings at the breast and you give 1 or 2 bottles a day, they're going to be fine. It's really the baby that starts getting the majority of a bottle too early and maybe just a few times at the breast that there's a chance they can get preference to the easy, fast flow of a bottle. I don't have a problem with you starting a bottle on day 1. If that's what you need, go for it.
Yeah.
But make sure your baby has a lot of skin to skin time, a lot of time at the breast. 1 or 2 bottles a day is not going to break your breastfeeding relationship. And in terms of going back to work, sadly in this, this country, you have to go back. I see women all the time that have to go back at 6 weeks. 12 weeks is the norm, which is so hard.
It's nuts.
But I always say, well, let's not stress about that right now. Focus on this first couple weeks here.
Right.
I would say like a couple weeks before you need to go back, you want to pump to create a little stash, right? You don't need those freezers full of milk that you see on social media.
You don't need that.
But you don't need those, right? Your body's designed to feed your baby, not fill a freezer and feed your baby. I would say you want to have enough milk in your freezer for the times you can't pump at work, right? So you've got a little stash going, but ideally what you're pumping while at work is what's feeding your baby the next day.
Yeah.
Again, like allow yourself grace. Going back to work is hard. Leaving your baby, even if they're with family members or a great daycare, it's stressful. And then work on top of that. I say like do the best you can and you're going to be fine.
That part.
I don't like to stress people out even a little,
It's not needed.
No.
What are your thoughts on on-demand feeding versus scheduled feeding?
Well, there really is no scheduled feeding. I don't know when that really happens. It's always on demand because even if your baby at a certain point gets into a routine, right? It's never a schedule. What are you going to say? I'm sorry, baby. It's 2. You're not eating till 3.
You're not on schedule yet.
Right. Yeah. They get into a routine. So you kind of know what to expect after several weeks. Like, okay, they kind of wake up at 7 and then they eat. But as you know, that can go out the window any moment, any day. They can get sick. Guess what? They're awake again all night and they want to be on you. They can start teething. They learn a new skill. You went to Disneyland and the next day they fall apart. Those are things that happen every day.
All the time.
There's really no schedule. It's really, you feed on demand and do the best routine that you get into, knowing at any moment
it
could fall apart. Yeah, it could fall apart. I mean, what kid is really ever on a schedule, even the older they get?
No, because life is always shifting.
Life is always shifting.
And I'm talking about even the most stable of lives. Like, it's still, because kids are always growing.
Yes, changing, hormones. You are too.
Oh my gosh, that part.
So many people, when can we start, the schedule? And I'm like, you could try, but I don't think it's going to go very well. It's going to stress you out more. It's like, people that keep scales at their house. And I'm like, let's put that away.
God. Can we just talk about that? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because listen, I told you I was one of those parents that, the scale was like, it was in my dreams every single night. Like, what is the number going to say for my baby?
Yeah. I mean, I can understand if you're having an issue with weight gain. But again, I wouldn't probably suggest bringing that into your house. It just is going to cause you too much stress.
Yeah.
Too much stress. Especially people that are like weighing after every feeding. I'm like, no, they're not eating the same amount all the time. So we're looking at an overall picture of this. Mostly if I go on a home visit and I see a scale, I'm all, let's slide that into the closet.
Let's just move this out of the way. We don't need this right now. Finding the perfect carrier is like finding the perfect pair of jeans. Everyone has their own style and personal preferences. That's why Ergobaby offers a variety of carriers to meet parents exactly where they are at. Whether you're looking for a newborn-specific carrier or a carrier that will support your family for years to come, there's something for everyone. Head to the show notes to click the link to find your perfect carrier. When you're on the go, you don't have time to waste on difficult-to-use, bulky, back-breaking, and simply uncomfortable strollers. Your kids want to enjoy their stroll, and you should too. The Metro Plus strollers are backed by science to support your little one's growing body and give you an ergonomic stroll wherever your adventures take you. Shop today at ergobaby.com/podcast and get 20% off. All right, so what are your top tips for boosting milk supply? Because I know that's something that our parents, of course, want to know.
I know. And I will say this. many times it's perceived low milk supply, right? You're perceiving it. You're thinking, well, I'm only able to pump 1 ounce. Yeah, but you're exclusively breastfeeding and your baby's gaining weight. You shouldn't be really having anything excess is an oversupply.
Left. Yeah.
So I would say most of the time it's a perceived low milk supply, right?
Yeah.
But a true, low milk supply, we have to look at so many factors. It's, it could be the baby, it could be your anatomy, it could, I don't know, or like, oh, I'm breastfeeding, but I'm sleeping through the night. That's the number one thing. Because people call, oh, I had a full milk supply, but it's going down. And I'm like, well, did something change? Like, did you get ill or no? And I'm like, okay, so you're breastfeeding, how many times during the day? And then what are you doing at night? Oh, well, we're, giving formula at night. I'm like, okay, well, there's your problem.
Yeah.
You have to wake up and either pump or breastfeed.
Or it's going to, it's going to decrease.
Go. Yeah. Milk doesn't really just disappear. Usually there's something that's happened that causes it. Yeah. Lots of skin to skin. I hate to say pump after breastfeeding. That is a short-term plan. You will burn out on that very quickly.
Very quickly.
But really, removal of milk is what makes more milk. Yeah. My top tips are stay hydrated, stay close to your baby, breastfeed anytime they look interested. If you need to pump after to try and get a boost up, you can do that. Sometimes teas and, tinctures and pills can be helpful. Not always. They're not a magic cure. Yeah. And I do find many people coming in that aren't putting in the work to make the milk, but what can I eat? And I'm like, it's not about what you're eating.
It's supply and demand.
Be malnourished and still provide milk for your baby. You have to put in the time, you know, but also I don't want to pile on guilt onto someone that's already got a whole bunch of things on their plate. So a lot of time I'm like, breastfeed with the milk you have. I mean, I say, how would it feel if you just breastfed with the milk you had and then topped off with formula? How would that feel to you? And, everyone's different. It's hard. It's hard, especially when it is like a physical thing. Like their body just isn't maybe they have what we call insufficient glandular tissue. It's going to be really hard for that person to make a full milk supply. And it's devastating. I feel that, there's so many women that have low milk supply, true low milk supply. And, their dream was to breastfeed. It's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just have to allow yourself, again, grace to say, okay, well, I'm going to make something else in its place. It's not the end all be all.
How would people find out if they had actual low milk supply, whether it's through anatomy, like you said, the glandular?
Ideally, OBs, right? When you're pregnant, or, certainly I know midwives do, they look above your belly button and they should look and be like, okay, your breasts to me look like the kind of shape that you may have this. They would be maybe tubular, wide space, cone shaped, not a lot of breast tissue there. Right. If you knew pregnant, oh, this is a thing, I got to kind of put it in my brain somewhere that I may not make a full milk supply. It's not as devastating.
Yeah.
Versus once your baby comes out and then I show up in your hospital room and go, oh, did anyone ever talk to you about your breast shape before? And they're like, no. I mean, I would say most of the time, lactation consultants are the first person to tell these women, oh no, your breast shape might be the type that may not make any milk, low milk, certainly not a full supply. And that's you're just dashing someone's dreams the moment their baby comes out. It's hard. It's
That's very hard.
Yeah. I would ask if you're pregnant or have concerns thinking, do I have this? Ask your doctor, have them do a breast exam. If your doctor isn't, find a lactation consultant and know going in, because it's going to be an easier pill to swallow than once your baby's here and
yeah,
it's hard and you're stressed and everyone's like, well, look, my sister made all this milk.
And you're like, wow, thanks. We appreciate it, Aunt Edna.
People like, well, the grandma, well, your sister made a lot of milk. I'm like, hey, you're not helping.
You're not
you
helping.
Go out of the room. You're out.
Out of the room. Thank you. We appreciate your input. Your very unsolicited input. Thank you.
Yeah.
That does not make them feel better.
Yeah. But if you're breastfeeding and your baby's gaining weight, you don't have a low milk supply just because you can't pump ounces after breastfeeding. Yeah. You don't need that, So I think a lot of times it is perceived low milk supply, which, you need to understand you're designed to make the milk your baby's drinking today, not in 5 years.
What would your encouragement be to someone who is struggling to breastfeed or just simply can't?
Support groups are helpful. There's a lot of postpartum support groups out there. Just talking, knowing you're not alone. Doom scrolling social media isn't going to help you. Put your phone down, take a walk, look at your baby. There's so many things that go into raising and loving a baby. Breastfeeding is just one of them. And luckily, certainly in this country, we have access to good formula. Yeah. Most of the time, clean water. So your baby's going to be fed. 2 years from now, obviously, you're going to look back. It's not going to matter how you fed them because you've moved on and they love you and they're happy and they're healthy. Yeah. I mean, look at you and me. We weren't breastfed. We're great.
And we were okay.
Many times I'm in the room and I'm like, well, were you breastfed? They're like, no. And I'm like, look, you're a doctor. You're great.
You're a doctor. You're a whole doctor. You're okay.
Yeah, you're smart.
Do you love your parents? Do you love your mom? Do you love them? Okay, great.
I feel like I'm here to talk about breastfeeding, but I'm all talking about not breastfeeding.
No, but I hear you. If anything, what I hear you saying is that however it turns out, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yes. And you're no less of a person because you didn't breast or chest feed.
No, you're not. That you're okay. That's what I hear from you. And I think it's really powerful coming from you. Because I think, to be honest, you would be the last person that people would expect, being an IBCLC saying, it's okay. It's okay. However your journey ends up, it's okay. Hearing you say that, I hope is giving someone who's listening just a lot this breath of fresh air, just I hope that somatically their body is just relaxing hearing you say that. I know mine would.
I've had people say, oh my God, I thought you were going to yell at me. I'm like,
no,
yell at you because you
not
don't
at
want
all.
to breastfeed.
No, not at all.
Listen, it's about your mental health more than anything.
That's what it's really all about.
My goal is not for you to breastfeed. My goal is for you to be happy and enjoy your time with your baby. Because as you know, it goes by so quick.
It goes by so quick.
Yeah, whatever that looks like to you and your goals, I'm here to help you. But I'm also here to sometimes be realistic and say, listen, I don't know that this is going to happen for you. Let's think about another way that we can support you that will make you happy.
Ergobaby never settles for less than exceptional. From materials to workmanship, our products are built to last for years to come as your baby and family grow. That's why every Ergobaby Carrier and Bouncer comes with the Ergo Promise Lifetime Guarantee. If you find a manufacturing or material defect, we'll replace the carrier, bouncer, or part at no charge. We stand by our products so you can carry your precious cargo with confidence. Shop now at ergobaby.com/podcast. for a special listeners-only discount. Give yourself the gift of time and your baby the gift of a cozy lounge. You need a breather, mama? Bouncer. Need a shower? Bouncer. Designed with the advice of a pediatric orthopedist and preferred 2-to-1 to competitors, Ergobaby's Evolve 3-in-1 Bouncer is a safe place for baby when they can't be in your arms. Get yours today at a special listeners-only discount at ergobaby.com/podcast. Why should someone work with an IBCLC?
Like I said in the beginning, it's hard to learn how to position and latch, especially if, a lot of people have sisters and family members around that are like, oh yeah, I totally know how to do this. But many of us are alone, especially in a city like Los Angeles. A lot of people live here with no family, no close friends. Sometimes it's a little tweak, They're like, it hurts so much. And I'm like, why don't we try this? And they're like, oh my God, that doesn't hurt at all. I'm like, okay, let's practice. Let's keep practicing. So positioning and latching in the early days would be one reason. Just reassurance, like, okay, yeah, no, you're doing good. Your baby's gaining weight. That alone is helpful. But it could be even bigger, like, you know, my baby's not gaining weight, or there's a tongue tie, things like that. There's a lot of reasons that one would call a lactation consultant. Sometimes I'll go to people's houses and they have no problems. They're like, I just wanted someone to talk to. I'm like, okay, great, I'm here. Let's do this.
That's so
Tell
good.
me everything.
That's so good. Not all superheroes wear capes, and you're definitely a superhero, Jennifer, because it's needed. I think when people are in that space, it's just like, we just need someone to say it's okay. And I think you're doing that work. What is a must-have product that you would recommend to new parents?
I'm like, just keep what you have in your house. I feel like we overbuy. And I think when you had your first son and I had my first son, there was like one stroller, one baby carrier, one whatever.
Yeah.
And now, and I'm like, oh my God, look at all these strollers.
There's so many things.
Yeah.
There's so many things.
Can't even imagine how stressful it must be to like, be like, what do I need? What do I need? What do I need? First of all, in this first several weeks, you don't need anything. Like, where are you going? Diapers. I just use the pillows that are in your house. I will say I do love a nursing stool. Those are one of my favorite things because they really help get you into a nice position. So you're not like, you know, hunched over.
Is a nursing stool, is that something you step on or put your feet on? What does it look like? I have
one right here. Hang on.
Okay, you got to show me what this looks like.
Listen, my kids are adults and I keep my nursing stool.
Oh my goodness,
I love it. It's just a little wooden stool because they're comfortable.
Oh,
they just lift your feet up and
that's what I thought.
Tilt your pelvis so you're relaxed and lean back, right? You're not like,
like this. Yeah.
So I do love a nursing stool because people do tend to like, or they're short legs and their feet are just dangling. Like, that's not comfy. Nursing stools I love. Obviously, Ergobaby Carriers are my favorite. I still save my first one. It's just like nostalgic for me.
It's the best.
Yeah, baby carrier for me is like probably the top thing because when your baby's upset, I'm like, pop him in the carrier and go for a walk. Everyone's happy.
The best thing.
I feel like, at the beginning, it's just like, all you need is you and your baby and a comfortable bed and people bringing you food.
What keeps you up at night as a mama?
Oh, I mean, last night, who knows? A million things keep me awake at night. It could be like, how am I paying for college? Is there going to be an earthquake? I don't even want to know about the foundation under my house, retirement, a million things. Just run through my mind all night. What's interesting, though, is I heard somewhere if you can't sleep, to mentally take yourself on a walk that you know. And I've been doing that. And I don't even make it to the end of my block. And I must fall asleep. You just try to stay calm. It's hard to control life. But nighttime, I could think of 10 million things that stress me out.
Oh my gosh. All right. Lastly, a lot of our listeners will probably be up, pacing the floor tonight as they're listening in. What is the word of advice that you would give them if they're stressed out right now?
Breathe. Ask for help. It's okay to say, I need help. Crying always feels good to me. Know it will pass. It will change. People say, when does it get less stressful? And I said, well, it doesn't. It just changes. But it does go by so fast. That first year is a blur. It's a blur. When I look at photos, I'm like, oh, those babies, they're so cute. Yeah. It's so sweet. Life is precious. And, you just got to put your priorities where you know that you can achieve them and don't put too much pressure on yourself to be perfect. Yeah. Your baby's going to love you. The morning will come and it'll be another day. Again, I always say, don't look too far into the future because we can't control it, right? And it just stresses you out. Like, oh my God, what's going to happen? We don't know. We're going to be calm. But asking for help, having a supportive, I always say, you just need one friend to call. Is this normal? Is this normal? What about this? Am I okay? One good friend goes a far way. And finding your people.
Find your people. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I hope that this episode has made your life with baby a little bit easier. Ergobaby is dedicated to building a global community of confident parents. The Life with Baby podcast is just one of many ways we hope to support parents through all the joys and jobs of parenting. This podcast was produced by Tiffany Toby, consulting producer Anthony Gannon, edited by Angel Hunter and Hannah Richardson Speckert, written by Victoria Allen, sound design and theme song by John Jackson, graphics designed by Noah Friedenberg, and our executive producers are Christina Saletti and Kalani Robinson. And I am your host, Brandy Sellers-Jackson.